Look, ma'am, with all due respect, this isn't some weekend target practice. This is the advanced marksmanship program. Maybe the civilian range down the road is more your speed. The crowd of young, eager soldiers chuckled, a wave of nervous energy and quiet condescension rippling through the ranks. The man who spoke, a burly instructor named Sergeant Davies, puffed out his chest, basking in their validation. He gestured dismissively at the woman standing before him. She was older than the rest. Her gear was functional but worn, and she stood with a stillness that he mistook for uncertainty. She offered no reply. Her eyes, calm and unblinking, were focused downrange, her expression unreadable. She didn't flinch, didn't argue, didn't even acknowledge the insult. Her silence was a void, and it made Davies deeply uncomfortable. He saw a hobbyist, an outsider trying to play soldier. But across the range, observing from the shaded porch of the command tower, a four-star general saw something else entirely. He saw the way her feet were planted, a subtle, almost imperceptible rooting to the earth. He saw the economy of her movements. He saw a ghost from his past. If you believe true skill needs no introduction, type respect below. The setting was a high-angle sniper range carved into the side of a desolate mountain, a place where careers were made and broken. The wind, a fickle and treacherous beast, howled through the canyons, carrying with it the fine, gritty dust that coated everything. Sergeant Davies continued his public lecture, using the woman as his primary teaching aid for what not to do. He pointed to her rifle, a standard-issue model that looked almost antique next to the customized, high-tech systems the other candidates carried. You see this, people? This is what happens when you don't respect the craft. Inadequate equipment, inadequate preparation, his voice dripped with scorn. The woman, whose name on the roster simply read E. Morgan, remained a statue of professional calm. While Davies pontificated, her hands were a blur of quiet, methodical action. She wasn't looking at him. She was observing the mirage shimmering off the distant rocks, reading the subtle dance of the grass in the valley below, her mind a silent supercomputer calculating windage, elevation, and spin drift. Her focus was absolute, her world reduced to the variables between her position and a target over a mile away. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was concentration. It was the deep, profound calm of someone who had been in far worse places, facing far greater threats than an arrogant instructor with a chip on his shoulder. The qualification exercise began. One shot, cold bore, a single opportunity to prove they belonged. The target, a steel silhouette shimmering in the heat haze, was set at an almost impossible distance. The wind gusted, a physical force pushing against them. Davies stood behind the firing line with his arms crossed, a smug smirk on his face, waiting for Morgan to fail. She settled into her position, her breathing slowing until it was barely perceptible. She exhaled, her finger moving to the trigger. And then a dull, metallic click. Not the thunderous crack of a high-velocity round, but the dead, empty sound of a catastrophic failure. A jammed bolt. Sergeant Davies's smirk widened into a grin. Well, what do you know? He boomed, loud enough for everyone to hear. Looks like that relic finally gave up the ghost. That's a disqualification, ma'am. Pack it up. He started to walk toward her, ready to personally escort her off his range. But Morgan didn't move. She didn't panic or curse her luck. With a fluid efficiency that was breathtaking to watch, her hands moved to clear the malfunction, her fingers performing the intricate steps of an en-bloc clip extraction, a technique so advanced and obscure that almost no one on that range had ever seen it performed. Before Davies could officially disqualify her, a voice cut through the air, sharp and authoritative. Sergeant, it was the general, striding down from the command tower with a purpose that made everyone stand a little straighter. He carried a long, heavily customized rifle case. He didn't even glance at Davies. His eyes were locked on Morgan. She will use my weapon, he stated, not as a suggestion, but as an order. He laid the case on the ground and opened it, revealing a magnificent, perfectly balanced M210 enhanced sniper rifle, a weapon that was itself a legend on the base. He offered it to her. Morgan accepted the rifle with a quiet reverence, her hands moving over the stock and scope with a familiarity that sent a shockwave of confusion through the onlookers. She didn't need to check the zero. She made two tiny, almost invisible clicks to the windage knob, accounting for the change in barrel harmonics and ammunition lot. She settled back into position, the rifle becoming an extension of her own body. She took one single, controlled breath. The rifle cracked, a whip of sound that echoed through the canyon. For a long, suspended moment, there was only the whistle of the wind. Then, a faint ping echoed back from the target. A perfect hit, a dead-center shot. And then, there was only silence. A profound, deafening silence that consumed the entire range, broken only by the choked sound of Sergeant Davies whispering, "No, that's not possible." The general walked forward, his boots crunching on the gravel, each step an indictment. He didn't consult a file or a tablet. He knew. He stopped beside Morgan, who was already calmly extracting the spent casing, but his gaze was fixed on the pale, stunned face of Sergeant Davies. "Sergeant." The general's voice was low, but it carried the weight of decades of command. "Do you have any idea who you just tried to humiliate in front of your soldiers?" He didn't wait for a reply. "You are looking at Master Chief Petty Officer Evelyn Morgan, retired. For 7 years, she was the lead instructor for the Naval Special Warfare Development Group's Tier 1 sniper program. The most elite marksmen in the world learned their craft from her. That en-bloc clip technique you just saw, she didn't just master it. She invented it. It's in the goddamn field manual." The words landed like hammer blows, each one systematically dismantling Davies's world. The quiet, unassuming woman was not just a professional. She was the professional who wrote the book. The general then turned his back on the disgraced instructor and faced Morgan. In a gesture that stunned every soldier present into absolute stillness, the 4-star general, a man who commanded entire divisions, brought his hand up in a slow, crisp salute. It wasn't the perfunctory gesture between officers. It was a sign of profound, almost reverent respect, offered from one legend to another. "It is an honor to have you on my range, Master Chief," he said, his voice devoid of all pretense. The title, Master Chief, hung in the air, imbued with a new, terrifying weight. He then slowly scanned the faces of the other candidates, his eyes finally landing on Davies. "Assumptions are the enemy of readiness," the general declared, his voice ringing with finality. "Competence has no gender. It has no age. It has no uniform. It has a signature. All of you just witnessed it. Do not ever forget it. The public lesson was complete. Arrogance had been confronted by quiet competence, and the result was absolute. The silence that followed was one of deep, humbling education. The story of the shot didn't just spread through the base, it detonated. It traveled like wildfire through mess halls, barracks, and encrypted chat channels. By nightfall, everyone from the lowest private to the colonels in command knew the name Evelyn Morgan. They spoke of her in hushed, awestruck tones. They no longer called the training area Range 4. It was now, and would forever be, known as Morgan's Line. The legend grew with each retelling. Some swore she had calculated the rotation of the earth in her head. Others claimed the general had the spent shell casing mounted on a mahogany plaque in his office with the inscription, "Respect is earned." The event became more than a story. It became a parable. It was a stark reminder that the most dangerous people in the world are often the ones you would never notice, the quiet professionals whose skills are so profound they have no need for advertisement. Her one shot had recalibrated the entire culture of the base, instilling a new fear of underestimation and a deep reverence for true, demonstrated mastery. A few days later, Sergeant Davies found Master Chief Morgan in a quiet corner of the base armory. She was meticulously cleaning the general's M210 with the patient, practiced hands of a surgeon, preparing to return it. Davies stood there for a long moment, stripped of his bravado, his posture slumped in defeat. He looked smaller, diminished. He finally found his voice, and it was shaky, uncertain. "Master Chief," he began, the title now tasting of ash and humility in his mouth. "I was wrong. I was unprofessional. There is no excuse for my conduct. I am sorry." Morgan didn't stop her work, but she paused, her hands still. She looked up at him, her gaze as steady and neutral as it had been on the range. She gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. "Understood, Sergeant," she replied, her voice flat, devoid of anger or triumph. Then she added a simple piece of professional advice. "Keep your sight picture clean. Focus on the fundamentals. It was not an absolution. It was not forgiveness. It was a lesson delivered with the same dispassionate precision as her shooting. For Davies, it was a chance to rebuild, a reminder that the path to competence begins with humility. Months later, the story of Evelyn Morgan's qualification day was no longer just gossip. It was institutional folklore. It became a mandatory part of the introductory brief for every new candidate in the advanced marksmanship program. The instructors used it as the ultimate case study on the mortal sin of making assumptions. Sergeant Davies, a profoundly changed man, became the story's most effective teller. He used his own public failure as the sharpest, most painful point of the lesson. He would describe the deafening silence after the shot, the weight of the general's salute, the unnerving calm in Morgan's eyes. He taught his students that true strength doesn't need to be loud. The legacy of that day was not a plaque or a nicknamed range. It was a fundamental shift in mindset. It was a new, institution-wide respect for the quiet ones, the unassuming figures whose placid exteriors concealed a lifetime of discipline and a capacity for lethal precision. True legacy is not a name etched on a wall or a medal displayed in a glass case. It is a standard that is passed on, a lesson that takes root in the hearts and minds of a new generation and fundamentally changes the way they see their world. It is the quiet competence that inspires others to be better, to look deeper, to value substance over superficial noise. Evelyn Morgan never sought recognition. She only sought to maintain a standard of excellence that she had spent a lifetime perfecting. But in doing so, she created a legend that would outlive any single shot, any single moment of personal vindication. Her profound silence became the loudest and most enduring lesson the base had ever learned. That respect is never demanded. It is earned through precision, through discipline, and through an unwavering commitment to the craft itself. For more stories where competence triumphs over arrogance and where quiet professionalism defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Tales.